Another person, almost.
Mr. Depp, we're going to talk about Ms. Heard in a couple minutes, but I'd like to first talk about your career in Hollywood. And so could you please tell the jury how you ended up acting in the first place?
I ended up acting by accident. I was a musician, and I'd moved out to Los Angeles with my band when I was 20 years old. And then there were a couple of things that happened in the band where the band split up, and I remember I was filling out job applications, and then Nick, with a friend of mine who happens to be, he was an actor, less known then than he is now, Nicolas Cage. And I was filling out job applications at any, video stores, clothing stores, anything, just to be able to pay the rent. And Nick Cage said, why don't you meet my agent, because I think you're an actor. I think you could be an actor. And I said, look, I'll meet anybody, I'll do anything at this point. And so he sent me to his agent, Eileen Feldman, and I met with her. She sent me to read for a casting director named Annette Benson, who was casting a film called The Nightmare on Elm Street. They brought me back to read for the director, Wes Craven, and I read for Wes Craven and somehow got the job. But I was by no means an actor. I didn't have any desire to be an actor. I was a musician. But the fact that these people were going to pay me what I found to be a ludicrous sum of money, which was it was kind of the SAG minimum. It was $1,284 a week, which I'd never seen that kind of dough before in my life. And so I suddenly, then I did some other couple of dumb movies because I still, in my mind, I was a musician, and this was just a way to pay the rent, pay the bills, live. Then suddenly I found myself on that road. I had been placed on that road as an actor, and then one thing led to another, from film to film, and then I was cast in a TV series called 21 Jump Street when I was 22, I believe.
Mr. Depp, between the time that you were cast in Nightmare on Elm Street and you were cast in 21 Jump Street, how did you enjoy acting during that time?
It was foreign to me. But I didn't have any great ambition to be an actor. I'm a normally. I've always been quite a shy person. I've always been quite introverted. And so there was a very strange metamorphosis from being one of four, that is to say, one of four in a band where you have this fraternity or this brotherhood, and you're out there fighting the world together to try to get that record deal or whatever you're looking for. And when I got on this series and my life started to change in various ways, that is to say that people started to, you go into a restaurant and you'd see people whispering and pointing and all that. I was very uncomfortable with it. I was very uncomfortable with it, and I didn't like it. Just because I never wanted to be the lead singer and the guy out front and get all the attention, and I didn't. So suddenly I was on my own, and I was having to deal with this newfound sort of notoriety, and it was odd. It was very odd, and it was. Yeah, it was a very uncomfortable thing. I mean, I don't think it's anything that one can get used to. I'm still not used to it now, which I'm actually glad that I'm not used to it. Because if I were, I don't think I'd be the same person that I am.
Mr. Depp, did there come a time when you became passionate about acting?
Once I realized that that's the road that I was on, and that any attempt at going back to music would be it would have been. I hated the idea that since the television series had come out and I had been exposed as this character or this actor, I had to realize in my own mind and heart that there was no going back to music, because I didn't want to, I didn't want to use whatever amount of success that I had attained from the TV series and that sort of thing. I didn't want to use that to influence, some career in music. I had far too much respect for music than to just become what they wanted me to become, which was a teen idol or a teeny, that sort of thing. I fought that with everything in my being. So once I realized that music was no longer an option, then I began to study at various places. The Loft Studio, which is now long gone. In Los Angeles, I studied with some other teachers, Saunders C-Cat. I read all the books that you could read, and all that was great, but you realize that the only way to learn, or the only way to learn how to, it's not act necessarily, the only way to learn how to react and behave, because it's just behavior and it's reaction, was to do it. It's on the job training, it's trial by fire. So I did my best to work up my own approach towards a character and such.
And what were a couple of the first few projects that you worked on where you were really able to implement that approach?
I would say that the first film that I had done, that I really took, where I really felt, okay, I've done the work, I know what I need to do. I would say that where I considered myself an actor, I suppose, was when Oliver Stone cast me in Platoon in 1986.
How did you come to be cast in Pirates of the Caribbean?
Well, that's many years later, but I had been Disney had offered me a film called Hidalgo, when it was about a man and his horse in the desert and stuff, and I read the screenplay, and I just didn't think it was for me. But I wanted to have a meeting with them because at that point I had a 2-year-old, 2.5-year-old daughter, and so, or 3, and for 3 years I watched nothing but animated films, cartoons from Tex Avery to Bugs Bunny to that was all I watched with my little girl, and I received the screenplay for Pirates, and it was I somehow in my mind I saw this opportunity, like a way to mesh characters like cartoon characters. For example, Wile E. Coyote gets a boulder dropped on his head and he's completely crushed, but they cut to the next scene and he's just got a little bandage on his head. So I started thinking about the parameters that were available to cartoon characters, and if they were available to cartoon characters, and nobody ever asked a question, whether you were 5 or 95, you didn't ask a question. Oh, Wile E. Coyote, of course he's still alive. So I tried to incorporate these kind of ideas into the character of Captain Jack Sparrow, so that I could try to push those parameters and control the sort of suspension of disbelief, to be able to control the characters' actions, words, movements, and put them in a place where the things that he would do or say were so either ludicrous or mainly something that also something the cartoon characters can get away with things we can't. Captain Jack Sparrow can do things that I could never do. He could say things that I could never say. So it was for me a way to stretch the parameters of a character and take a risk in doing that. But if it panned out, I felt I was on a pretty good mission. If it panned out, I thought that it might be a character who would be accepted by 5-year-olds and 45-year-olds and 65-year-olds and 85-year-olds, and in the same way that Bugs Bunny is,
You mentioned
believed.
You mentioned that you received the script. When was that?
I'm sorry?
When did you first receive the script for Pirates of the Caribbean?
The first screenplay I received was 2002, I believe. Yeah, 2002.
And what did you think of that script when you received it?
I thought that it had all the kind of hallmarks of a Disney film. That is to say, a kind of a predictable 3-act structure, with and the character of Captain Jack was more. He was more like a swashbuckler type that would kind of swing in shirtless and, be the hero. And I had quite different ideas about the character, so I incorporated my notes into character and brought that character to life, much to the chagrin of Disney initially.
Now, when you say you made changes to the character, how did you do that?
Just in preparation, the very same way that I've ever approached any character. You look for a back history. You base it on, it could be anything. Like Edward Scissorhands, for example, I based on a dog that I'd had and newborn babies. My sister had a couple of new babies, and I watched them, because I thought that Edward would see things from the sort of from a place of innocence, and not knowing exactly what things meant or were, and also that look of a pure, innocent child when they experience something for the first time. Those were the two main ingredients that I thought would serve the character. And with Captain Jack, again, the cartoons, the Pepe Le Pew. It's like making a soup. It's ingredients. It's just ingredients. There's some Pepe Le Pew in there. There's some Keith Richards in there. There's a bit of I figured this is a guy who's been on the sea for the majority of his life. Quite possibly his brains may have been scrambled a bit by the sun. And also I thought that he'd been on the sea for so long that he had his sea legs, but when he got on land, he just didn't have his land legs. So he could never quite stand still.
How did the film ultimately turn out in your view?
I didn't see it. But I believe that the film, the film did apparently, and they wanted to keep going, making more, and I was fine to do that. There's great freedom in being able to. It's not like you become that person, but if you know that character to the degree that I did, because he was not what the writers wrote, so they really weren't able to write for him. So once you know a character better than the writers, that's when you have to be true to the character and add your words, add the rewrites. I believed in the character wholeheartedly, and initially the Disney folks were somewhat upset.
Now, you mentioned that the film was, to your understanding, a great success. How did your life change after the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie came out?
Though I'd been around for many years already, and people knew who I was and all that. After Pirates 1 came out, there was a completely different. It was a completely different way of life was being sort of, my family and I were being plunged into. That is to say, at our house in Los Angeles, you would have people trying to climb the gates to get in to see Captain Jack Sparrow. You would have people trying to bust in the gates dressed as Captain Jack Sparrow. You would have and follow you and your family. So that was the moment when there was no other way but to we had to hire more security guards, and I was certainly worried for my kids' safety. And so then that's when instead of just the one guy, there became several security people, because I wanted to make sure that my kids were safe when they went to school, or when they went to Disneyland, or when they went to the mall or whatever. So yes, more security, and then just getting followed, by hordes of paparazzi and things like that. It's I've had worse jobs, certainly. I can't complain about it, but after a while you realize that anonymity has left the building a long time ago. Anonymity's gone, and that's an odd thing to deal with. When you you can't just drive down to the diner and get a cup of coffee or something. It's not possible. It turns into something else altogether. So it's it's acceptance, and of course there's a bit of sacrifice involved. I can't complain about the work that I've been given. I can't complain about any of that. I have no right to. But it does make you have to think very creatively when you've got little kids, about how to take them to the park, or to the swings, or to the this or that, or movie, or it becomes a strategic mission, and that's what happened after Pirates.
Now, you mentioned your family. Who did your family consist of at that time?
Another person, almost.
Mr. Depp, we're going to talk about Miss Heard in a couple minutes, but I'd like to first talk about your career in Hollywood. And so could you please tell the jury how you ended up acting in the first place?
I ended up acting by accident. I was a musician, and I'd moved out to Los Angeles with my band when I was 20 years old. And then there were a couple of things that happened in the band, where the band split up, and I remember I was filling out job applications, and then Nick, with a friend of mine who happens to be, he was an actor, less known then than he is now, Nicolas Cage. And I was filling out job applications at any, video stores, clothing stores, anything, just to be able to pay the rent. And Nick Cage said, why don't you meet my agent, because I think you're an actor. I think you could be an actor. And I said, look, I'll meet anybody, I'll do anything at this point. And so he sent me to his agent, Eileen Feldman, and I met with her. She sent me to read for a casting director named Annette Benson, who was casting a film called The Nightmare on Elm Street. and they brought me back to read for the director, Wes Craven, and I read for Wes Craven and somehow got the job. But I mean, I was by no means an actor. I didn't have any desire to be an actor. I was a musician. But